Stephen continued to control the herd of rhinos. They moved back and prepared to charge again. The two unlucky Tribulation sect members who'd suffered fractures tried to get up, only to be pierced by the ancient faction's swords. Stephen paused when his phone rang. The Leviathan unit's intelligence team stationed in Cadis was calling. He handed the device to Kim. "Map out the line of movement and press this button. The beast will follow the command. Think of it like a game." Kim glanced down at the complicated buttons on the device. "I don't know how." "Test it out. It doesn't matter what happens. The ancient factions will wrap up the battle soon." Stephen answered the call. After the disaster on the ocean, Warhawk and Maplewood had suffered inexplicable losses. They suspected there was foul play involved. They sent their delegation teams to Cadis and used the excuse of investigating the disaster to station more of their warships in the waters. Stephen didn't think they were attempting a conspiracy. They were only trying to find an excuse to pressure Cadis's royal family to come to a secret agreement. "Are they antagonizing the U.S.? "Not yet. They want an explanation from us," the Leviathan unit replied. "They want to know why our warships conveniently withdrew from the area of the ocean before the explosion happened." Stephen didn't need to explain himself to Warhawk and Maplewood, but Cadis was involved. As King Javon Lorenz's ally, he had to at least come up with a reasonable explanation to fool them. Whatever the case may be, a thorough investigation of the trench in the ocean depths was impossible. After Warhawk and Maplewood obtained clues from Cadis's initial investigation, they would use their manpower to conduct their own investigation. It would be a waste of their time and resources. Stephen ended the call and turned back to the screen. The battle had ended in a draw. The four ancient factions and the Tribulation sect had left the scene to preserve their forces. It was almost dawn, and the final event for the elimination round was about to begin. Salim was in the office building next to the Research Institute reviewing the remaining teams. He pressed a button, and an antenna outside the jungle lit up. Circular plates with numbers engraved on its surface hung from the top. A holographic projection appeared in the sky and introduced the final segment of the elimination round. The participants would need to come up with a way to obtain a plate. There were too many wolves and too little meat. There weren't enough plates to go around. The Leviathan unit members who were standing around were anticipating the next event. "Salim's a genius at strategizing. This will speed up the elimination round and lure the teams into hiding out into the open. The number of participants remaining in the final round are limited, and it won't take that long to get through all the challenges. I heard Mr. Zane found the people he was looking for. That means the game's about to end." A high-definition display hung from the top of the tower, counting down to 9 o'clock in the morning. The final round would begin at 12 in the afternoon. Not long after the announcement was made, the participants gradually left the jungle and gathered at the empty clearing below the antenna tower. They were in a hurry to snag one of the plates and qualify for the final round, but climbing the tower was a daunting task. For a moment, everyone stood around, waiting for someone to take the lead. Cardinal Diana's sarcastic voice rang out. "What are you all waiting for? Are you going to stand here until time's up?" The ancient martial arts factions didn't hesitate to provoke them. "Members of the Tribulation sect are nothing but cowards. The only thing they know how to do is make sarcastic remarks on the sidelines. You keep bragging about your talismans. If they're so impressive, shouldn't it be easy for you to get the number plates? If you're too afraid to climb the tower, then why don't you stay here until the time's up? You look like you need a good workout. Throwing talismans doesn't require much strength. Use this opportunity to train and exercise for once in your life." Ever since the four ancient factions discovered that the Tribulation sect was after the secret manual, they'd labeled them as a threat to humanity and sought to eradicate them from the face of the earth. The Cardinals were furious. They would lose all face if they didn't respond, but they couldn't risk starting another battle. They'd just fought, and they hadn't recovered their strength yet. Diana threw her talismans towards the top of the tower. It triggered a high-voltage current when it touched the metal frame. The talismans turned black and sizzled with smoke as it fell off the tower. "What if the participants stay at the bottom and give up on the competition?" Kim asked. "They won't," Stephen said. "They're tempted by the prize. They'll try to get the number plate even if it means risking their lives." Like Stephen had guessed, After a short period of silence, the participants took action. They attacked the tower with fire, storms, swords, and various manifestations one after another. Each attack sparked a high-voltage electrical current. A few brave souls formed a barrier using their inner energy and climbed the tower, dodging the electrical currents with their speed. But they were turned to charcoal when an unexpected electrical current surged along the entire tower. The participants were forced to enter a temporary alliance. "We have to work together," the leader of the island state's martial artist declared. "The best way to do that is to get rid of the electricity and then fight for the number plate. It's likely that the tower's high-voltage cables are connected to the water power station on the island. If we destroy the cables, the connection will be cut off." The island state utilized a similar powering method, so he was familiar with this kind of setup. The talkative four ancient factions and tribulation sect kept quiet. They lived in secluded places where there wasn't much technology around. The leader of the island state's martial artists carefully observed the tower and tested the ground with his blade. The cables were accompanied by a magnetic field where electrical currents were transmitted. Once he sensed the magnetic field, he could determine the location of the cables. Salim was surprised that the participants had found a solution so quickly. The cables were buried 20 feet below the tower. "Should we interfere?" the Leviathan unit member asked. "No, let's wait and see. They'll have to fight for the number plates afterwards." The leader of the island state's martial artists infused his inner energy into his blade and slashed at the ground. Layers of dust billowed into the air. The other participants came over to help with the excavation. 10 minutes later, the cables appeared at the bottom of the pit. The participants stepped back, worried that touching the cables with their swords would electrocute them. "We don't have to touch the cables to destroy them." The leader of the island state's martial artist condensed a ball of energy in his hand. He tossed it into the pit, and a pillar of flame burst into the sky. The tower's lights flickered and disappeared, leaving only the screen with the countdown behind. While everyone was looking up at the tower, the island state's martial artist attacked the participants closest to them, drawing blood. The other participants looked at them in disdain. "Going back on your word?" "The task is complete, and our cooperation is over. If you're smart, then don't get in our way." "You think it'll be easy to get a number plate? We'll chop you to pieces and feed you to the sharks." The sound of weapons clashing was accompanied by strings of curses. The clearing below the tower bustled with activity once again. Liam, who was hiding a short distance away, set his sights on the tribulation sect. His target was Cardinal Diana. She was the eyesore who'd escaped from Stephen before the competition began. Liam wasn't in a hurry to climb the tower and take a number plate for himself. There'd be time for that later. Cardinals Percy and Pedro leaped onto the tower and began their steady climb to the top. The elders of the ancient factions weren't about to be outdone. They unsheathed their weapons and chased after them. Everyone else was engaged in battle. Liam concentrated his inner energy toward the tip of his blade and released it in a burst of light. Diana sensed the killing intent and leaped to the side, throwing out a wave of energy with her sword. Her quick reflexes had been honed through countless battles. The two attacks clashed, kicking up a cloud of dust. When Diana's line of sight was obstructed, Liam closed the distance in a split second and engaged in close combat. Every slash of his blade was accompanied with another attack from his other blade, targeting her vitals. Diana was forced to take a few steps back and reposition. Her talismans hovered around her, blocking Liam's strikes. "Your faction's techniques are too ancient," Liam mocked, sheathing his blades. "Have you ever considered keeping up with the times? Why are you participating in this competition when you like scrap metal so much? Just leave, and you'll have all the time in the world to collect your junk." Diana scowled at him. "When I get my hands on you, you won't dare run your mouth again." Liam wasn't afraid of her threat. He summoned his wooden totems. There was a slight adjustment to his technique from his previous battles in the jungle. Branches extended from the wooden surfaces. When the totems collided with the talismans, Liam spread his hands. The totems sank into the soil beneath his feet. The branches took root and germinated, growing into a towering tree. The branches thickened and secured the talismans in place, halting their movements. By the time Diana realized that she couldn't control the talismans anymore, it was already too late. "What's the matter?" Liam provoked. "Throw out more of your talismans. They'll be a nice addition to my collection. As he spoke, he subtly activated a feature on his watch. It was similar to the device that the Leviathan unit had given Stephen. Vines burst through the cracks on the ground and wrapped around Diana. She tossed out another talisman, setting the vines ablaze. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were the 5 elements of nature. They simultaneously reinforced and restrained each other. The branches were sturdy, but they couldn't resist the talisman's flames for long. The branches blackened from the fire, and Liam pretended to panic. He used his watch to control the roots of the vines and bound them to the underground cables of the tower. They were damaged, but they were still connected to the water power station. The high-voltage electric current could still be used as a weapon. "Is that the extent of your technique?" Diana asked. "If you have any other moves, you'd better use them now. When your wood is burnt to ashes, nothing will be left to protect you." Liam pulled out one of his blades and slashed at her face. "I have many techniques, but you're not qualified to witness them." She dodged, and he followed up with another attack, aiming for her eyes. As they fought, Liam kept Diana's attention on his blade by targeting her face and distracting her from her surroundings. In the process, he maneuvered their positions towards the underground cables. Liam swung his blade one more time before reaching for his watch to control the vines binding the cables. The roots lifted the cables out of the pit and slammed into Diana's back. An electrical current sparked to life. It paralyzed her, and her heart stopped beating temporarily. That one moment was all Liam needed to unsheath his other weapon and plunge his blades into Diana's chest. The sudden death of a cardinal caused the Tribulation sect members to fall into a momentary panic. Salim, who was monitoring the battles below the tower, was blown away by Liam's performance. As expected of a martial artist who the Leviathan unit's leader personally trained. Diana's cultivation was higher than Liam's, but he used the environment to his advantage and took her down. The battle below the tower had reached its climax. Most of the teams had suffered casualties. One-on-one fights weren't practical anymore because they wasted too much time. Powerful techniques that covered a wide range were cast one after another. The participants rushed to get rid of their competitors to take a number plate at the top of the tower. The spectators stayed up all night to watch the end of the first round, except Stephen and Kim. They were already asleep. When the participants were standing around deliberating how to climb the tower, Stephen had noticed Kim dozing off on the couch and turned off the display. He'd carried her to bed and joined her under the covers, drifting off not long after. Sawyer was bored to death at the hotel. He didn't want to waste any more time on this island. He called Warhawk's higher-ups to complain. "Bianca's team has been wiped out. There's not that many members left from Zorvis's team either." "I see," the higher-up said, sounding uninterested. "It seems there's still a big gap between genetically modified martial artists and true martial artists." "Stop being long-winded. I'm leaving the island right now." Sawyer didn't want to experience the mocking gazes from the crowd tomorrow, especially not Stephen's. "Don't worry, we have another mission for you." The sudden explosion in Cadis's international waters was up in the air. There were no leads, but they suspected that the United States' warships had received news beforehand and retreated before the disaster hit. Zorvis was a public sponsor of the martial arts competition, and the higher-ups wanted Sawyer to use his connections to investigate the mysterious explosion. Sawyer wasn't happy to hear that his stay in the U.S. would be extended. "Do I have to take care of all the dirty work around here? How am I even supposed to investigate when the Eastern Port is under martial law? The United States' warships are patrolling the waters everywhere." "Calm down, Sawyer. Treat this mission as a business endeavor. With your status, as long as you don't go too far, no one will go against you." Sawyer didn't have a chance to refuse before the higher-ups hung up on him. He had no choice but to contact Zorvis in the middle of the night. Regardless of what happened to Silver Shield Corporation's executives, their businesses were still active at the Eastern Port. He could use that as his excuse to investigate the port and the surrounding ocean. The island not too far away from Mirage Island had become lively. Ash, Rhett, and most of their group were gathered around the bonfire watching the competition from a box that they were told was called a TV. "Can we participate? It wasn't easy for us to escape the bottom of the ocean. Now that we're free, we should continue cultivating." "I didn't expect Mr. Adams to have such interesting hobbies. He's a powerful leader, but he also likes to participate in messy competitions like these." Is there still time to register? The TV says the final round will begin at noon today. Phantasma Isle was isolated from the world when it sank. There were no threats, and there was no spiritual energy. This reduced the effectiveness of cultivation. They were martial artists from ancient times, but they hadn't made any significant progress since their capture back then. As the leader of the group, Ash tried to talk them out of it. Don't cause Mr. Adams unnecessary trouble. We don't know how much the world has changed. Let's familiarize ourselves with the situation first. His words were met with endless protests. The Tribulation Sect, Hidden Cloud Temple, Spectre Cemetery, Bloodfiend Valley, and Peach Blossom Moor are still around. Why can't we join in the fun like them? It's a waste of our lives sitting around and doing nothing all day. Their fighting spirit had been ignited by the broadcast. It couldn't be extinguished by a few words. Ash sighed and promised them he would discuss their participation with Stephen. Rhett, who was sitting beside him, was immersed in delicacies he hadn't seen before. He was too busy eating to pay attention to Ash's dilemma. Aside from the older members of the group who weren't interested in worldly affairs, Ash and Rhett were considered the strongest martial artists they had. Ash snatched the fork from Rhett's hand just as he was about to take another bite. Stop eating and think of a way to appease them. Rhett wiped his mouth with a napkin and leaned back in his chair. What's the issue? Mr. Adams left his people on the island. Ask them for a mission, and the problem is solved. They'll be able to repay Mr. Adams for his kindness and earn living expenses while they're at it. I don't feel good about freeloading like this either. For what it was worth, Rhett occasionally had good ideas, and this was one of them. Ash stuffed the fork back in Rhett's hand and went to tell the others. Stephen slept soundly for the rest of the night. When he opened his eyes, it was past 9 o'clock in the morning. The elimination round had ended. 22 participants had survived the jungle and obtained number plates. Every team had casualties except for the 4 ancient martial arts factions because Liam and the Leviathan unit had been monitoring them since the beginning of the competition. There were a few hours before noon, so Stephen rolled over to sleep some more. Kim walked into the room and drew the curtains. Sunlight streamed through the windows. How long are you going to sleep? Wash up and change. You're the host of the competition. You'll be giving a speech later, so you have to pay attention to your image. Stephen lazily sat up in bed and stretched. The participants who made it to the final round weren't worth noting. In any case, Zane had found the people he was looking for. The rest would be taken care of during the challenges. The primitive jungle had been ravaged beyond recognition from the chaotic elimination round. The arena for the final challenges was on the beach. Layers of metal made up the platform. It was sturdy and could withstand just about any impact. The participants who'd obtained number plates were relaxing on the shore under beach umbrellas. They used the hours before noon to regulate their condition. Salim and the staff were waiting for Stephen. Mr. Adams, the challenges will begin at noon. We need to arrange the order of the matches. Don't they have numbers? Stephen asked, confused. Not exactly. There's an electronic screen on the plate, but there's no number. We need to randomly draw lots to decide the order. To the public, the challenges are randomized, but you have the final decision. Salim had taken everything into consideration. He was surprisingly considerate and thorough. Stephen sat on the sofa and reviewed the participants who'd made it to the final round. A cardinal was killed. How did that happen? Liam dealt with her, Salim said. I watched the battle last night, and his martial arts are exceptional. Stephen nodded approvingly. Diana was a difficult opponent, even for him. The fact that Liam had taken her down proved how outstanding his combat prowess was. Stephen decided the order of challenges based on difficulty to hype up the crowd. The first challenge, Cardinal Pedro versus the leader of the island state's martial artists. The second challenge, Cardinal Percy versus the elder from the Hidden Cloud Temple. The third challenge, Liam versus one of the Tribulation Sect members. Let's use this arrangement for now. I'll decide the rest as we go along. Not long after, the troublemakers, Tristan and Zane, barged into the room. Zane's targets had made it to the final round. The entire world will be watching the challenges, Stephen pointed out. Aren't you worried that your 2 targets will be killed before you get to them? During the past few days, Zane had been observing San and Juma. Their names and profiles were fake, and they were cunning and ruthless. When they ran into danger, they chose to retreat rather than engaging in direct confrontation. He has knowledge of techniques that even I didn't see coming back then. Who knows? He might become the dark horse of the competition. That's a high evaluation coming from you. What do you think about Liam Pierre? The Leviathan unit's leader is his teacher. Zane chuckled. He has potential, but he's young and he doesn't have much experience. Soon, it was 11 o'clock in the morning. Stephen led his people to the VIP seats beside the arena. The participants were filled with competitive spirit. Once they took down the competitors around them, the ancient texts would be theirs. Stephen walked to the center of the arena with a microphone in hand. Everyone here has worked hard to make it to the final round. Keep it up, and the prize just might be yours. We've made sufficient preparations on our end. The prize is stored at the warehouse on the island. It'll be given to the winner as soon as the competition ends. The high-definition screen next to the arena switched to a display of the glass case containing the fragment of the sacred manual. Observing the fragment with the naked eye alone wasn't enough to understand the profound knowledge and spiritual force it contained. It was somewhat ordinary at first glance. Every participant will be matched against another participant in the final round. The order is randomly chosen by the computer. Good luck. Stephen elegantly walked down the stairs, and Salim took the stage. He introduced the rules of the competition. There was nothing special about them. The participants were allowed to use weapons. If a participant was knocked out of the ring in the arena, or if they admitted defeat, that would be considered the end of the challenge. Every participant had signed a life and death contract, so deaths were unavoidable. Salim pressed a button, and the names of the participants shuffled randomly on the screen. The first challenge was Cardinal Pedro versus the leader of the island state's martial artists. The two of them jumped into the arena and unsheathed their weapons. Without exchanging a single word, they leaped into battle. When waves of energy hit the surface of the arena, they vanished into thin air. Salim noticed the surprise on Stephen's face and leaned over to explain in a hushed tone. The metal layer consists of a honeycomb-shaped bubble structure inside. It's useful for cushioning and absorbing energy. There's a special device buried 30 feet below the arena to collect the energy during the challenges. Stephen was in disbelief. Can an abstract existence like inner energy be collected and stored? What will it be converted to? I'm not sure about the specifics. They're the latest product Dr. Dalton and his team developed at the lab. To my knowledge, the energy is liquefied into a transparent droplet that flows into a glass container. Stephen inwardly praised Dr. Dalton and his team. Having a reliable team of researchers was imperative to every country's development. Compared to the ingenious devices, he was disappointed by the first challenge. Pedro wasn't as strong as he'd predicted, or maybe it was because the techniques of the island state's martial artists were too unique. Stephen considered his harsh training with Zane in the underground palace the true essence of a battle between martial artists. Every move shook the heavens and the earth with the potential to cause mass destruction. The battle in the arena paled in comparison. Tristan and Zane were sitting next to him, and they were dozing off. They were even less interested in the first challenge than he was. You two could at least keep your eyes open and watch the challenges. Mr. Zane, we prepared this competition for you. Tristan ignored him, while Zane had the decency to smooth his shirt and sit up straighter. What's there to watch? Zane said, suppressing a yawn. Those techniques are nothing special. If they gathered their teams and fought together, that would be much more interesting. Stephen was exasperated. Don't even think about it. The U.S. isn't your playground. When the competition ended, those who didn't win the prize wouldn't accept their defeat so easily. They had to prepare for the worst possible outcome. He had a feeling that the Leviathan unit would have to temporarily work overtime. In the arena, Pedro threw out his talisman to launch a fatal attack, but the leader of the island state's martial artists countered by unwrapping the bandages around his arm to activate the strange eyeballs protruding from his skin. When the talismans came into the line of sight of the eyes, its metal component burst into black flames. As the fire spread with the wind and burned brighter, Pedro felt disoriented. When you use your inner energy to control your talismans, there will be a backlash from the flames, the leader said. Your only option is to fight me barehanded. Pedro felt like 1,000 needles were stabbing his brain, but his talismans were his strongest weapon. He couldn't throw them away. And he didn't have to. There was an easy solution. Pedro attacked the leader with his sword. Cutting off his arm was the key to solving this problem. The leader saw right through him. "You want to cut off my arm? I'll make it easy for you." True to his word, he held out his arm. The spectators were stunned. Was he being arrogant, or did he have a plan? Stephen noticed a shift in the eyeballs embedded in the leader's arm. When Pedro was 2 steps away from reaching the leader, a sharp pain spread through his torso. He felt like his skin had been sliced open 1,000 times. Blood seeped from beneath his clothes. At the last second, he came to an abrupt stop and leaped back, putting some distance between them. Pedro unbuttoned his shirt. Gashes lined his torso, and the same bloody eyeballs on the leader's arm were protruding from his skin. Stephen couldn't figure out what the leader had done. He whispered to Salim, "How's the investigation on the island state's martial artists going?" "A team from the Leviathan unit has infiltrated their country on a merchant ship. They haven't found anything yet. The leader of the island state's martial artists didn't use this technique that often during the elimination round. We don't know much about it." Stephen was curious as to what those eyes were capable of. He released a small amount of his inner energy towards the leader's arm, but he felt the same stabbing pain in his head as Pedro had. Color drained from Pedro's face as he broke out into a cold sweat. His energy was being drained into the eyes on his skin. He felt like he was being sucked dry. He steeled his heart and raised his sword. He had to remove those eyes from his body by force. The leader didn't give him a chance. He mumbled an incantation, and the eyes on Pedro's skin burst, tearing his insides. Blood gushed from his wounds. "It's over," the leader said. "You're not leaving this arena alive." Pedro gritted his teeth. "Then I'll take you with me." He forcefully controlled his talisman, which was burning with black flames, and condensed it into a phantom clone of himself. When he swung his sword, his manifestation did the same. The leader casually deflected the attack, barely using any of his strength. Pedro was weakening quickly, and he was bleeding profusely from where the eyes had exploded. Half a minute later, his lifeless body fell to the floor. The staff ran over to clean up the arena. Salim announced that the second challenge of the competition would begin soon. Cardinal Percy was matched with an elder from the Hidden Cloud Temple. Percy wasn't in a good mood after witnessing his fellow cardinal die miserably in the arena. "You still have time to withdraw," the elder advised. "Surrender if you don't want to end up like your companion." "Don't pretend to be just and righteous," Percy snapped. "The Hidden Cloud Temple has always been aloof and stayed away from worldly affairs, but now you're participating in a public competition for some treasure? It's our responsibility to prevent the treasure from falling into your hands." Percy gave the elder a disdainful look. That was just a dignified excuse to justify his greed. He unsheathed his sword and attacked. The elder raised his staff. It extended to a length that surpassed Percy's sword, which gave him the opportunity to strike first. Percy dodged, and the staff crashed onto the floor, cracking the surface. "You're barbaric for an old man." "Thank you for the compliment. Good luck in surviving my next attack." The elder raised his staff, and it extended once more. He swung the staff, sweeping the arena with its length. Percy blocked the staff with his sword, but he was knocked back every time. He threw his talismans on the floor, and it exploded in a cloud of smoke. The smoke took on the shapes of a wolf, tiger, and leopard. They charged at the elder. The 3 animals might not be able to injure him, but they should be able to knock him out of the ring. The elder pointed at the sky with one finger. He manifested 18 phantoms of golden statues. They landed on the floor of the arena, shining like jewels. Salim leaned over and showed Stephen the screen on his phone. The numbers on the display were increasing rapidly. The device beneath the arena absorbed the energy released from the participants as they fought to minimize the destruction. "Does liquefied energy have any uses?" Stephen asked. "Can they be refined into medicinal pills, or can it be consumed as it is?" Dr. Dalton thinks it's like a stimulant. If a martial artist consumes liquefied energy, their combat strength will increase by several hundred times. But this effect is temporary, and it comes with severe side effects. If the enhancement exceeds the body's endurance limits, it could damage the meridians, crush the internal organs, tear muscles, or the person could burst from the inside out and die. As Percy and the Elder fought in the arena, they noticed something amiss. The speed at which their inner energy was draining was much faster than they'd expected. They reached out with their auras to sweep the battlefield for any domains that their opponents had set up in secret. "What happened to all that talk about being a righteous faction?" Percy said mockingly. "You're playing tricks behind the scenes." "This is more in line with the Tribulation sect," the Elder retorted. As their inner energy drained, their manifestations weakened. They were barely visible, so the two of them were forced to engage in close combat. They exchanged hundreds of blows within seconds. The Elder lost the upper hand when the talismans spun like blades and restricted his movements. There was no room for him to swing his staff, and Percy was relentless in his attacks. Stephen could tell that the outcome of the challenges had been decided. If this were a competition of physical strength, the Elder's chances of winning would have been much higher. The Elder was aware that he was at a disadvantage. When the talismans approached to restrict him again, he threw his dignity out the window and dropped to a crouch. He rolled across the arena to escape the circle of talismans and threw his staff into the air. It spun at high speed and clashed with the talismans. Percy slashed at the Elder with his sword, but he rolled and avoided it. The Elder grabbed Percy's ankles and shot forward, dragging him across the floor. The speed and angle prevented Percy from taking a swing at the Elder. The two of them fell off the arena together. They were both disqualified. Percy jumped to his feet, seething with anger. An urge to stab this old man and dismember his body overwhelmed him. Salim intervened before a fight could break out. "Please return to your respective teams. The third challenge is about to begin." "This isn't over," Percy said through clenched teeth. "You'll age faster if you stress too much. I suggest you take it easy." The Elder strolled back to his faction, leaving Percy fuming alone. There was nothing interesting about the third challenge. Stephen was 100% confident that Liam could take care of the small fry from the Tribulation sect. The Leviathan unit's intelligence agents hurried to the VIP seats and reported to Stephen in a low voice. "Mr. Adams, there are suspicious individuals wandering around the warehouse. They're participants from the Island State and Warhawk." "None of the participants have left their seats. Who are they?" "They're participants who forfeited and left the jungle halfway. They stayed on the island as spectators." Stephen guessed that these people didn't want their efforts to go to waste, so they were planning to steal the prize. He got up and followed the intelligence agents to the warehouse to observe the thieves. The security guards had been instructed to subtly leave their posts. The thieves were average martial artists. The real powerhouses were sitting in the audience, watching the challenges. The thieves sneaked into the warehouse through the window and looked around. Aside from empty wooden boxes, there was nothing of value. The prize must be stored underground. They scanned the room and found the control panel. The captain of the thieves was a martial artist from the Island State. He pointed his blade at the control panel. "Activate the mechanism. The prize is below us." His team was hesitant. "What if it triggers an alarm? The security guards are patrolling outside." "We're here for the prize. You should have expected these obstacles." No one answered. The captain glared at his team, who was staring back at him blankly. "We'll be disobeying orders if we leave without accomplishing our mission. Stop hesitating and do it." His threat worked, and his team went to the console and pressed the button. The floorboards parted, revealing a pit at the center of the warehouse. They peered over the edge. It was dark, and they couldn't see what was at the bottom. But according to the introductory speech, before the final round began, the fragments of the sacred manual were stored somewhere in the warehouse. The captain tentatively tossed his chain into the pit. He latched onto something, but he couldn't pull it out. Stephen didn't know if they were here to fish or steal. He slipped into the warehouse with the Leviathan unit. While the thieves were focused on the pit, he materialized the 7 gems. They crashed into their backs, and they almost fell inside. The captain reacted fast. He swung his chain in Stephen's direction. Stephen didn't avoid it. He blocked the chain with the sword. The air rippled when they clashed, forcing the captain to take a few steps back. "You're bold. I guess you're not planning to leave the island in one piece. The captain ignored Stephen and signaled for his team to capture the Sovereign alive. They made up their minds to fight to the death and charged towards him. Just as they unleashed their techniques, tentacles shot out from the pit and wrapped around the thieves. Dr. Dalton had raised a large octopus and implanted an AI chip to guard the fragment of the sacred manual. Swords had no effects on its tentacles. It aggravated the octopus instead. It used the suction pads on its tentacles to extract the thieves' inner energy. Screams echoed from inside the warehouse, but no one was around to hear them. As the energy drained out of the thieves, they gradually stopped struggling. The tentacles released them and dropped them on the floor. The Leviathan unit stuffed medicinal pills in their mouths to restore a certain amount of their strength, just enough for them to talk. The thieves who fell into the pit had already become a snack for the octopus. If you want to live, then tell me everything, Stephen said. Otherwise, you'll be in for a world of pain. The captain was a tough nut to crack, but his team was the opposite. He glowered at them. Warhawk's martial artists were all cowards who were afraid of death. Our superiors told us to leave the competition halfway to steal the prize. After that, we were supposed to wait for a chance to sneak to the dock and leave the island on a speedboat. Stephen more or less grasped the situation. Most of the participants had signed up for the competition with ulterior motives. The Leviathan unit tied up the thieves and let the security guards find somewhere to lock them up. During the interrogation, the thieves had revealed that Sawyer from Warhawk and the leader of the island state's martial artists were the ones who devised the scheme. Should we take them into custody? The Leviathan unit asked. Stephen shook his head. The whole world has their eyes on the competition. The media is constantly releasing articles and updating the public. We need to fight fair and square when influential figures are involved. Half a day had passed by the time the third challenge concluded. As predicted, Liam won his match. The next challenge would take place at night. Stephen and Kim went to a high-end restaurant for dinner. Now that you've expanded your business to Cadus, take a break and give the smaller companies a chance to develop. Kim sighed dramatically. A vacation sounds nice, but doesn't that mean I'll be unemployed? Stephen laughed. It's not that serious. Think about it. You and I will have more time together. Shortly after the thieves failed their mission, Sawyer came up with a random excuse and left the island. He was afraid of being held accountable. The leader of the island state's martial artists stayed at the hotel, cursing the people from Warhawk for being unreliable. The Sovereign caught them in the act. Why didn't he pursue the issue? His team tried to calm him down. Who knows what he was thinking? You should prepare for tomorrow. The ancient martial arts factions from the U.S. have deep foundations. It won't be easy to defeat them. The leader fell into deep thought. Aside from the island state and Warhawk, there were many countries interested in having the ancient text in their possession. They were willing to use any means necessary to get their hands on it. If he could reach an agreement with his competitors, the chances of stealing the ancient text would be much higher. After dinner, Stephen received a report from the Leviathan unit's intelligence team that there was yet another suspicious individual wandering near the warehouse. This time, Tristan and Zane hurried over to deal with the trespassers. Stephen was confused by their sudden enthusiasm. Are you two going to step in? The octopus is guarding the pit. The people I'm targeting are involved, Zane explained. They used fake identities to sign up for the competition. They've probably been waiting for this moment. The three of them observed the warehouse from a vantage point in the forest. The security guards slacked off according to their orders. There were 4 trespassers. 2 of them claimed that they were from Northern Europe, while the other 2 claimed to be from Africa. One of them took out a few seeds from his pocket and sprinkled them on the grass outside the warehouse. The seeds gave rise to a large, unusual flower. Its roots drilled through the soil and rocks, heading towards the pit from underground. Stephen reached out with his aura to inspect the strange flower. He couldn't figure out what kind of plant it was. How did they make the flower grow without an AI chip? Did they have martial artist techniques to let them control plants? When Stephen was about to intervene, Zane pulled him back. In ancient times, a group of ascenders from an ancient martial arts faction tore a rift through space and time, forming a passageway to another dimension. They used their ability to prolong the rift and gather seeds from another world. They incorporated these seeds into their martial arts. They're completely different from the flowers and trees you're used to. Danger always lurked in the shadows. Before the fragment of the secret manual appeared, these people had lived in hiding. The inner wall of the pit inside the warehouse was covered with a layer of steel. The roots took 10 minutes to burrow through the soil and reach the pit. When they touched the steel plate, Stephen pulled out his phone and remotely sent a signal to the security system in place. Tens of thousands of volts of electricity passed through the deck and incinerated the roots. The 4 trespassers frowned when they sensed the situation underground. They've set up security measures. The plants can dig through the soil, but they can't break in. Are we going in there ourselves? That's a big risk. They glanced at the security guard sitting under a tree not too far away, laughing and chatting as they enjoyed the breeze. If they alerted the guards, things would get troublesome. Let's try the other plants. There's one that secretes corrosive juices. It might be able to create an opening in the steel plate. One of them took out different seeds from his pocket and sprinkled them all over the grass. In less than a minute, a small sapling grew into a ball-shaped plant. It rolled into the hole in the soil that the flower drilled through earlier. Stephen's phone sent out a warning. The plant had secreted corrosive juices and was in the process of breaking down the steel plate. He couldn't let the pit be destroyed. The 3 of them rushed to the warehouse with the Leviathan unit. Stephen waved his hand and casted his domain of hellfire. It had no effect on the strange plants. They contained little to no spiritual energy for the flames to absorb. The strange plants used the flowers and trees in the vicinity to sustain itself. Every surrounding flower and tree had withered. If these strange plants were scattered across the world, the entire ecosystem would be destroyed. Just as the Leviathan unit landed in front of the 4 trespassers, they turned into flower petals. The Leviathan unit formed a cage of light around the petals, but they vanished, leaving only their laughter echoing in the wind. Their auras had also disappeared. Tristan couldn't sense them either. Their techniques are similar to Liam's wooden totems. They use nature to undergo some sort of transformation. To prevent them from escaping, you have to strike first and kill them instantly. That was easier said than done. The Leviathan unit planned to search the island, but Stephen stopped them. The 4 trespassers had been dressed in black and wore masks to conceal their identities. There wasn't enough evidence to officially make an accusation against the teams from Northern Europe and Africa. If this incident was blown out of proportion, public opinion would turn against the U.S. Take the fragment out of the pit and place it next to the arena. If they want it, they'll have to fight fair and square. To speed up the final round of the competition, Salim made use of the night. The challenges continued when the moon was high in the sky. In the hours between the afternoon and evening, the staff had placed a bulletproof glass case containing the fragment of the sacred manual on a stone pillar next to the arena. As the participants took their seats, everyone's attention was drawn to the conspicuous glass case. Salim was at the center of the arena with a microphone to explain. To make the competition more exciting, the Sovereign has instructed the staff to reveal the prize. The fragment of the sacred manual will go to the final winner. An overwhelming rush of aura swept towards the glass case. The participants were trying to test if the fragment was authentic or not. Unfortunately, an array had been set up on the surface of the case. It was impenetrable to aura or inner energy. Focus on your challenges, Salim said. Don't pull any tricks. You won't have a good ending if you violate the regulations. He left the arena, and the competition continued. Stephen wasn't interested in the subsequent challenges. He kept his gaze on the lounge area. San and Juma from the African team were relaxing on beach chairs with Craig and Chad from the Northern European team. The 4 of them were sipping their drinks as if they hadn't attempted to steal the fragment a few hours earlier. How far along are we in the final round? Stephen asked. We've got through 4 of 8 challenges scheduled for today, Salim reported. By dawn, only 4 participants will be left. For the next 2 challenges, match San and Juma with Craig and Chad. If they try to get out of it, call them out. In the arena, the Elder from the Peach Blossom War and Cardinal Miles were fighting to the death. The Elder was advanced in age, but he'd retained his youthful appearance by cultivating the unique martial arts of his faction. In this fight, he was at a disadvantage. Miles was determined to kill him. Diana and Pedro had been killed, Percy was disqualified, and the rest of his team was even more hopeless. If they didn't turn things around, they'd be kicked out of the Church of Catastrophe. Miles used the talisman as an indestructible armor. Cultivation-wise, he was one stage higher than the Elder. If the fight continued with no mishaps, he would be the winner. "It's time for you to surrender. You wouldn't want my sword to leave a scar on your handsome face, would you?" The Elder didn't respond. A shower of flower petals rained from the sky. Miles was already used to this technique. He swept the petals aside with his sword and rushed at the Elder. The Elder deflected the attack and moved to strike Miles's neck, but his arm deviated at the last second. His arm felt heavy, like there were sandbags weighing it down. A slight mistake during a battle could cost the martial artist his life. The Elder tried again, but the same heaviness washed over him. "Your armor gives you the ability to adjust gravity using magnetic field." Miles smirked. "You saw through my technique faster than I expected. If you want to fight up close, you'll be affected by gravity. But if you use long-range attacks, my armor will deflect it. It's a lost cause." Before Miles could attack, the Elder jumped out of the arena. The 4 ancient martial arts factions were on the same side. It didn't matter who won or lost. Stephen approved of his decision. Knowing when to retreat was also a skill. The ancient factions had preserved their strength. Perhaps, after the winner was decided, another fierce battle would break out. When the time came, there wouldn't be any rules or regulations. It would be a fight to the death. The staff cleaned up the arena, and the next 2 participants stepped inside the ring. San and Juma from the African team were pitted against each other. However, the second the challenge began, Juma jumped out of the arena and forfeited. During the next challenge with the 2 members of the Northern European team, Chad did the same thing. Stephen was fuming in his seat. It was clear that those 4 didn't take him or his competition seriously. A wave of criticism erupted from the audience. They were anticipating the matches, but the participants had surrendered for no apparent reason. Salim leaped into the arena at the fastest speed. "The 4 participants are suspected of cheating. To ensure a fair competition, the organizer has decided to temporarily halt the competition to conduct an investigation. The participants involved will be banned from the final round." His announcement was met by voices of opposition from the Northern European and African teams. They're at a critical stage. If they were banned from participating, their efforts would go down the drain. "We didn't violate the rules. Forfeiting is within the regulations. Our opponent's strength was beyond our skills, so we made the swift decision to tap out. How is that cheating?" Salim wasn't fazed. Competing with words was his forte. "You 4 were randomly matched against your teammate. You didn't show your true strength during the final round like every participant before you. This is challenging our authority and the rules. If you're not convinced, let's have the audience make a decision." The 4 of them were dumbfounded. Salim's reasoning was flawless, and they had nothing to say in defense. They had concealed their identities and signed up for the competition without a backer. No one was on their side. Salim held out the microphone to the audience. They shouted in unison. Everyone agreed that the Northern European and African teams had violated the rules. Salim had successfully directed public opinion in their favor. This was a live broadcast, but no one blamed the organizers of the competition. Stephen stood up and walked to the arena. He accepted the microphone from Salim. "Ladies and gentlemen, you came all the way to Mirage Island to witness an exciting martial arts competition, not to watch the participants bend the rules." He turned to San, Juma, Craig, and Chad. "You 4 have gone through multiple trials to reach this stage. It wasn't easy. I'll give you a chance to redeem yourselves with an additional challenge." This was the perfect opportunity to include Tristan and Zane in the final round. With them joining the competition, they could force the Northern European and African teams to show their martial arts and also appease the audience. San and Craig, the 2 members who didn't forfeit, nodded in agreement. They didn't have a choice. Stephen returned to his seat, and the 4 participants stepped into the arena. "Don't kill them too fast," Zane whispered. "We won't know what they're capable of unless we drag the fight out." "Relax," Tristan said. "Unlike you, I don't hold a grudge against them. I'll just play around with them and call it a day." The competition began. Whether it was combat experience or overall strength, the two ancient powerhouses surpassed San and Craig by a wide margin. In addition, the floor of the arena consisted of metal layers. Their seeds wouldn't be able to take root and germinate. They were at a disadvantage from the very beginning. Zane's attacks were swift and fierce. Every strike was laced with wind and lightning. His body had its limitations, but it wasn't that hard for him to suppress San and Craig by himself. As for Tristan, he wandered around the edge of the arena, watching the fight play out. Suddenly, he held out his hand. An embroidered pouch was in his grasp. "These are your seeds, right? You two look like you have a lot of free time on your hands. Are you planning on changing your profession and becoming a gardener?" As expected of the world's greatest thief, he'd stolen Craig's pouch of seeds, and no one had seen how he'd done it. Craig reached into his pocket and cursed. "Damn it, when did he steal my pouch? How am I supposed to fight now?" "Forget about it," San hissed. "Use your sword. I still have my pouch on me. I'll back you up." Stephen wasn't expecting Tristan's skill for thievery to come in handy only minutes into the match. After the competition, he would give the seeds to Dr. Dalton for research. Zane's strikes with wind and lightning were relentless. San and Craig were forced to step back each time. They were gradually inching towards the edge of the arena. San put some distance between Zane and Craig and cut the back of his hand with his sword. He pressed a seed into the wound. It used his blood as nourishment, taking root and germinating into vines that wrapped around his body like armor. When Zane attacked again, San wasn't knocked back. "Your unorthodox techniques are interesting, but aren't you worried that your plants will accidentally damage your internal organs?" "That's none of your concern," San said. "Worry about your own life." For the first time during the challenge, San took the initiative to launch an attack. His vines grabbed hold of his sword and attacked Zane remotely, while he followed up with his fists. Not far away, Tristan was stretching his arms over his head. The seeds had piqued his interest, and he was eager to join the fight. His figure blurred, and he melted into the floor, leaving his shadow behind. Craig noticed the shadow advancing toward him. He slashed at the ground. Cracks formed on the surface, but the shadow was intact. Craig was flustered when Tristan's shadow fused with his. "What the hell is this? Get out of here and fight me face to face." Tristan's laugh sounded. Then a ball of energy burst out of the shadow. At such a close distance, it was impossible for Craig to dodge in time. Even if he ran, there was no escaping his own shadow. The ball of energy slammed into Craig's torso, and he coughed up blood. His ribs were broken. He used the last bit of strength to swing his blade at the shadow beneath his feet. Sparks flew from the friction of his sword on the floor of the arena, but that was the extent of his attack. Tristan kindly gave him a reminder. "Give up. If you move haphazardly, your bones will pierce your internal organs." Craig was aware of his condition. Tristan had gone easy on him. If he wanted to, he could have easily severed his head from his neck and killed him instantly. Craig glanced at San and Zane from the corner of his eye. They were locked in battle. San's armor of vines evened the playing field, but he didn't have time to look away from his opponent and assist him. Tristan noticed Craig looking at his teammate for help. "You still don't want to give up? Unless you have techniques that can break through two-dimensional entities, it's over." Craig glared at his shadow. "Are you that confident in yourself? You've practically revealed the trick behind your technique." "Whether you know or not doesn't make a difference. The only way to break through different dimensions is if you reach the true immortal realm. You're far from it." This was only one of the many techniques Tristan had at his disposal. There were countless skills he had yet to use. He didn't give Craig a chance to respond. A beam of light burst from the shadow and pierced his knees, ankles, and elbows. Craig fell to the floor in a sorry state, no longer as haughty as before. The bones in his joints had been shattered. "You bastard." "I gave you a chance to surrender," Tristan said. "You didn't take it, but I'll give you another one. Crawl out of the arena within 1 minute. If not, I'll snap your neck." Craig mustered his remaining strength to crawl towards the edge of the arena. Stephen was surprised that the battle was going so well. The Northern European and African teams aren't as strong as the Tribulation sect. The talismans have unusual and bizarre effects. They're useful in almost every battle. Those two are much weaker in comparison. The Leviathan unit had noticed the same thing. We'll keep them alive and wait for Mr. Tristan and Mr. Zane to interrogate them. Stephen didn't think the competition would develop that smoothly. There were other mysterious participants like San and Craig sitting in the audience. It was likely that they would cause a scene after the competition ended. When Craig left the arena, Tristan reappeared. Now it was 2-on-1. Even if Tristan didn't use any offensive techniques, his presence alone was intimidating. San's gaze swept the VIP seats and caught Salim's eye. Why did you choose powerful martial artists like them for an additional match? Your organizers are deliberately making things harder for my team. Focus on the challenge, Salim said. You wouldn't have had to participate in an additional match if you didn't cheat the first time around. San turned back to the arena with clenched fists. He manifested a phantom of a large sunflower. It fired its seeds at Zane and Tristan with a speed and force far greater than a firearm. The metal platform was riddled with holes. Zane and Tristan were forced to dash back and forth across limited space to dodge. As Zane was on the move, he raised his hand to the sky. Dark clouds gathered above, blocking out the moon. Thunder rumbled, and a bolt of lightning struck the sunflower. Tristan darted behind San and threw a chain around him. I'll give you the same chance I gave your friend. If you surrender, I'll spare you. San refused to give in. He controlled the vines and made them wrap around the chains, trying to break free. Lightning flashed overhead, and the thunder rumbled louder. The clouds in the sky absorbed the electricity in the air and extended the duration of Zane's manifestation. The sunflower was a phantom San had manifested using his inner energy. His reserves were much less than the electricity in the sky. He tossed his sword aside. He was worried that if he casually waved it in the air, it would become a conductor and draw the lightning onto him. San's armor of vines became a mess, and they lost their defensive function. Tristan gripped his chain and swung San into the air. He plunged straight into the clouds and was zapped by bolts of lightning. The additional challenge ended just like that. When San fell down, he landed outside the arena. His skin was charred beyond recognition. After the last match for the night, Stephen called Wes and Aston over and gave them an important mission. Stay near the arena and guard the prize. The lounge area for participants is nearby. They might attempt to steal it before dawn. Understood, Wes and Aston said resolutely. The dark clouds in the sky blocked out the light of the moon and the stars. A young man and woman were wandering the beach below the palm trees. They'd hired the Northern European and African teams to win the prize for them. Everything we've done up until now is ruined. The 4 of them are banned from the final round, and San and Craig are heavily injured during the additional match. The Sovereign is despicable. He used his identity as the organizer of the competition to target us openly. There were 4 participants left in the final round. The final winner would be determined tomorrow, but that was none of their business. Regardless of who won and who lost, they needed the fragment of the sacred manual in their hands. If we return empty-handed, the elders are going to explode with anger. No one will be able to save us then. What should we do? The prize is out in the open. Should we go for it? Are you crazy? The Sovereign and his people are guarding the entire island. The 2 of them belonged to an ancient martial arts faction called Tempest Citadel. They weren't that different from the other ancient factions, but what set them apart was their devotion to their ambition. They'd been plotting since ancient times. The human realm was sealed. When martial artists cultivated to a certain stage, they would have to go through layers and layers of trials to ascend to another world. This process would gradually open a spatial gate. If one could open this gate forever, cultivation would be much easier. At the same time, it could facilitate the flow of spiritual energy between different dimensions and improve cultivation in the human realm. Striving to overturn the principles of the world was a risky endeavor and would perhaps remain an ambition for the foreseeable future. While the 2 members of Tempest Citadel discussed, they found themselves walking towards the arena. As long as they didn't make a move, observing wouldn't be a problem. The other participants aren't resting either. They're more nervous than we are. Maybe they're thinking the same thing. The 2 guards standing near the arena are young, but I can sense their auras. They're expert martial artists. We won't be able to get close to the glass case." Just then, a flock of vultures flew over the island. They were flying at a low altitude without a sound, and their eyes were fixed on the glass case. The participants who noticed them didn't let it show. They waited for the vultures to make a move so they could assess the strength of the two guards. The vultures circled above the arena 3 times before diving for the glass case. Wes and Aston leaped to the top of the stone pillar and drew their blades, releasing waves of energy that covered the sky. The vultures' wings spanned half of the arena. Due to their high defenses, the waves of energy weren't that different from slashes of a regular sword. A series of explosions sounded in the air. The vultures changed direction and headed for the glass case from a different path. "Do you really think a few birds could steal the prize?" Wes asked. "Keep your eyes peeled," Aston warned. "The mastermind is waiting for an opportunity to swipe the case." The vultures attacked from the different angle every time, but Wes and Aston knocked them back with their blades, preventing them from getting close. The Leviathan unit members below the pillar swiftly condensed their inner energy, sweeping the night sky with waves of light. When the vultures were hit, they burst into black feathers. They drifted with the wind and fell on top of the pillar. A split second later, each feather exploded like a bomb. Wes and Aston hurriedly formed a protective shield around themselves and the glass case with their inner energy. The feathers that didn't explode assembled and fused into a figure clad in black. The man charged into the flames without hesitation and reached out to grab the case. Wes reacted quickly and sliced the man's arm with his blade. "You're brave for attempting to steal the prize by yourself." The man didn't falter. "We don't need that many people to deal with trash like you." He'd seen the blade coming, but he didn't dodge on purpose. It didn't matter whether it was his arm or his head that was cut off. Blood didn't flow from his wound. The black feathers gathered around his severed arm, reattaching it to his body. Tristan and Zane appeared in a flash of light. With a wave of his hand, Zane condensed a cage of lightning surrounding the top of the stone pillar. The lightning burned the black feathers to a crisp. Tristan inspected the feathers in disgust. "It's been a long time since I've seen orcs. It was a mistake to reveal yourself. Every martial artist out there will be out to kill you." During ancient times, there was an unusual practice where martial artists would capture aggressive beasts, extract their blood, and inject it inside their body. This exchange of blood gave them some of the beast's abilities. Martial artists who attempted this practice were known as orcs. It was a cultivation method that went against the laws of nature and humanity. Every ancient martial arts faction, whether they are good or evil, sought to eradicate these abominations from existence. The man hovered in the air. He knew he wouldn't be able to steal the prize tonight. "What makes you so superior? Cultivation comes in different forms. As long as the body is strengthened, why does the process matter?" Tristan couldn't be bothered to waste his breath. He rushed forward in a streak of light. His movements were so fast that nobody could see his attacks clearly. Fist-sized holes appeared on the man's body. If he was a regular person, his organs would have been gouged out. Unfortunately, his body was made of feathers. The 2 new arrivals were too strong for the man. He dashed into the sky and disappeared into the night. Wes and Aston expressed their gratitude to Tristan and Zane. "It was nothing," Tristan said, dusting his clothes. He landed on the ground and addressed the participants loitering in the lounge area. "If there's anyone who wants to spar, come forward. Standing around is a waste of time." Everyone had witnessed Tristan and Zane's martial arts during the additional challenge. Tristan's techniques were especially strange, and no one wanted to meet an untimely death. Everyone dispersed, clearing the lounge. The situation was settled, but the Leviathan unit's military advisor and strategist, Salim, was less than pleased. He was responsible for the martial arts competition, and he would not tolerate an attempt to steal the prize. He furiously instructed his subordinates to carry out a search. Even if they had to overturn the entire island, they had to find potential suspects. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how to explain this incident to Stephen in the morning. In the middle of the ocean was a broken and rusted ship. It sailed autonomously without a captain. A black vulture landed on deck, and his companions immediately surrounded him. "Why did you come back empty-handed? Didn't you get the prize?" You make it sound easy, the man snapped. Mirage Island is full of unique martial artists. I was lucky to get away unscathed. The Sovereign's people were too strong. Their martial arts deterred the participants from joining in when they attempted to steal the prize. On the surface, the man's companions were similar to regular martial artists. The only indication that they were orcs were the markings of beasts on their skin. What should we do next? One of them asked. Should we sneak onto the island and try again? The man had been hiding on Mirage Island since the start of the competition, and he'd gathered a lot of valuable information. No, the Sovereign has started multiple construction projects in Cadus. They're important to the development of the U.S. If their hostile neighboring countries want to start a conflict, their first target will be Cadus. We'll head there first and see if there's anything we can use to threaten the Sovereign. The man guessed that the fragment of the sacred manual on the island wasn't the only one the Sovereign had. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so generous to take it out as a prize for the competition. His companions didn't have a better idea, so they agreed and adjusted the ship's direction toward Cadus. Not long after, the sky brightened, and the final day of the martial arts competition began. This was a grand event for spectators around the world. The auction price for broadcasting rights started at 10 digits. After breakfast, Stephen and Kim took their seats at the VIP viewing area near the arena. Salim stammered as he reported the incident from last night. The Leviathan unit had investigated for hours, but there were no leads. Maybe that vulture had already left the island and flown towards the distant sea. It's not a big deal, Stephen said. Before the competition ends, the prize is up for grabs. There'll be plenty of people who want to steal it. Who are the remaining 4 participants? Liam, the elder from Spectre Cemetery, Cardinal Miles from the Tribulation Sect, and the leader of the Island State's martial artists. How do you want to arrange the matches? Salim's question was a difficult one. It was the same as asking Stephen who he wanted to walk away with the prize. At this stage of the competition, most of the participants had sustained injuries, and they'd revealed varying degrees of their martial arts during the previous challenges. Stephen's priority was to ensure the safety of his own people. Match Liam with the Spectre Cemetery's elder. They don't hold a grudge against each other, and they have principles when it comes to ethics of martial arts. It'll be a fair fight. They won't play dirty, and they won't go too far. Let the other 2 fight to the death. Salim took the microphone and stepped into the arena to announce the first challenge. Cardinal Miles versus the leader of the Island State's martial artists. The instant Miles jumped into the arena, he threw his talisman into the air. It transformed into a circular rotating blade. The leader of the Island State's martial artist condensed 2 clones of his blade. He avoided the rotating weapon and lunged for Miles. It was 3 blades against 1. Miles blocked with his sword as his rotating blade dove for the leader's back. The 3 blades transformed into 6 clones of the leader and deflected the sneak attack. There was a small cut on Miles's red robe. Even if the leader's blades didn't make contact, the aura it contained served as an additional strike. Stephen reached out with his aura and scanned the clones. How are his clones a near perfect replica of his real body? Shouldn't each one be 1/6 of the original strength? Salim's eyes were sharp. He might have consumed a special modification to increase his strength. His clones don't have the strange eyes on their arms. Regular martial artists absorb the spiritual energy of the natural environment to facilitate their cultivation, and they intertwine their own inner energy with the energy from the environment to activate their techniques. The Island State's martial artists condensed the spiritual energy of the environment into a specific shape as its own entity. It was more practical than regular martial arts. The victor of the challenge would depend on who could deal the most damage to their opponent. The rotating blade couldn't break through the clone's defenses. The leader of the Island State's martial artist attacked Miles while the blade was being held back by his clones. The Tribulation Sect is weaker than I thought. You should have hid instead of embarrassing yourself in public. Admit defeat if you know it's good for you. Miles was enraged. The Church of Catastrophe was one of the strongest ancient martial arts factions around. Who did this random Island State martial artist think he was? He leaped into the air. You're too short-sighted. I'll show you what the Tribulation Sect is really capable of. The rotating blade transformed into a vortex that absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy. The clones rushed forward to take down the vortex, but Miles forced them back with his fists. He used the energy from the vortex to enhance his attack. A destructive force crashed into the arena. The leader staggered from the impact, but he managed to block it. Mike was going all out, and it was time for him to do the same. He unwrapped the bandages on his arm. A burst of light shot towards Miles from the eyes embedded in his skin. The vortex absorbed the light and the inner energy it contained. Miles pointed at the leader, and the talisman detonated, releasing its stored energy in one massive explosion. It triggered a series of subsequent explosions that bombarded the arena. Several layers of the metal platform were blasted to smithereens, and the audience not too far away were hit with the debris. If the Leviathan unit hadn't activated the defense array in time, half of the audience would have been killed from the shockwave. Stephen instructed the Leviathan unit to call the medical team and take care of the injured. Salim made an announcement and asked the rest of the audience to head back to the hotel and watch the live broadcast. As the explosions died down, Miles used his talisman to trigger a storm. Bolts of lightning struck the arena. Two powerful techniques launched in quick succession and had decided the outcome of the match. If the leader of the island state's martial artist dodged, he would have had to leave the ring. If he stayed in the arena and took the hit head-on, only his dead body would be left behind. When the dust settled, the leader was at the center of the arena in a miserable state. His body was burnt and mangled. At a critical moment, the eyes on his arm had burst to condense a protective shield, which barely managed to save his life. Miles landed on the floor. What a shame! You can't even walk out of the ring to surrender. He struck as quickly as lightning and impaled the leader with the sword, annihilating him from existence. Salim announced the winner and arranged for the staff to put out the fire in the arena. When the smoke cleared, the damage to the metal platform came into view. The logistics personnel calculated the losses, and they were sky high. A member of the Leviathan unit reported to Stephen, 28 spectators sustained minor injuries. 4 are seriously injured. The medical team performed timely treatment, and none of them are in danger. That damned cardinal from the Tribulation sect. Is he here to ruin the competition? He still has numerous talismans on him. If he uses the same technique in the final challenge, he'll end up destroying the island and his opponent. Stephen was reluctant to let his own people fight someone as dangerous as Miles, but he couldn't prohibit him from using his weapons. The rules stated that the participants were allowed to use their weapon of choice during the competition. Maybe he could ask Tristan to walk around the arena a few times and have him steal the talismans without anyone knowing. Stephen scanned the room and spotted Liam in the crowd. He waved him over. I think you have a high chance of winning your match with Spectre Cemetery. What's your opinion of Miles? 10% chance of victory, Liam said. That's if I can come up with a way to avoid his explosions. His evaluation was objective and rational. There was no hint of fear in his voice, even if a 1/10 chance of victory meant a high risk of losing his life. The Leviathan unit's leader had painstakingly trained Liam for a long time. Stephen didn't want his student to die a meaningless death. Victory and defeat are common in war. Knowing when to yield is a skill. Besides, I don't care who takes the prize. The main reason I held this competition in the first place was to help Zane find the people he was looking for. Before Miles makes a move, you have the choice to forfeit the challenge. Liam was surprised that Stephen was looking out for him. It hadn't been long since they'd met. I understand, Mr. Adams. I know what to do. In the lounge nearby, the elders of the 4 ancient martial arts factions were gathered for a last-minute meeting. All of their hopes were pinned on the Spectre Cemetery's elder, and he was feeling a tremendous amount of pressure. The elders had already come up with a rational analysis for him. Liam's martial arts are unpredictable. His wooden totems offset the fatal damage that his main body sustains. I think you should fight to the best of your ability, but don't overdo it. Remember, Miles is the final opponent. If you or Liam go overboard, neither of you will be in peak condition to fight him. The Spectre Cemetery's elders knew they were right. His chances of winning the competition would be higher if he were only up against Liam, but taking down 2 expert martial artists in a row was a difficult task. We're almost at the finish line. I'll see what I can do. The Peach Blossom Moors elder tried to persuade him. Don't be stubborn. Even if we lose, we can still intercept the tribulation sect on the island or the ocean. His reasoning was based on the assumption of Miles winning the competition. If Liam won, the fragment of the sacred manual would still be in Stephen's hands. They were on good terms, and Stephen would most likely agree to letting them borrow the fragment and study it properly. The Spectre Cemetery's elder was convinced. Liam was on Stephen's side, so the only enemy was Miles. The rescue operation continued until noon. The damaged arena proved how intense the competition had become, but no one paid attention to the details. The spectators were eagerly waiting for the next challenge. Stephen and Kim sat in VIP seats to watch from up close. Wes, Aston, and the Leviathan unit surrounded the arena as a triple-layer defense. There was no telling what Miles would do in the final challenge. He was destructive and a maniac, the worst combination. Liam and the Spectre Cemetery's elder entered the arena and greeted each other politely. They had a mutual understanding that they would both use their full strength in the challenge. There'd be no hard feelings no matter what the outcome turned out to be. After a short greeting, they unsheathed their weapons and leaped into action. The two ancient powerhouses were nowhere to be seen. Where did Tristan and Zane run off to? Stephen asked. Tristan went to Annapolis to give Dr. Dalton the seeds, Salim said. Zane is at the hospital to monitor his target's condition and recovery. He was concerned they'd secretly leave the island when everyone was focused on the competition. Stephen had almost forgotten about the martial artist who claimed to be from Northern Europe and Africa. The strong naturally stole the spotlight. No one paid attention to the weak. How are San and Craig's injuries? Their fractures and internal bleeding are quite serious. They'll be bedridden for more than a month. They didn't have medicine on them, so their recovery will be according to the norm. Their conversation was interrupted when Stephen's phone rang. It was the captain of the Maritime Defense Force. He was on a mission in Cadis's waters to monitor the port. There had been no news until now. A ghost ship was sighted on the ocean near Cadis. There's no signal, and it looks worn out. It's affecting the shipping routes. Stephen was skeptical. Ghost ships existed in books and movies, but not in real life. Is there a mistake? What if this is a trick by Warhawk and Maplewood? Warhawk and Maplewood's fleet was damaged from the explosion. Their naval forces are running low. They don't have any to spare. This isn't their doing. The ghost ship sank several merchant ships sailing between our country and Cadis. In that case, mobilize the reconnaissance satellite to assess the situation. If all else fails, test them with long-range firepower. Stay at the port until further notice. When Phantasma Isle's defensive array was destroyed, it had released a massive amount of energy. There was no guarantee that another surge of energy wouldn't happen. Stephen hadn't seen Ash or Rhett's group ever since he made arrangements for them on the island. After the competition, he should meet with them and ask about Phantasma Isle. Ancient martial arts factions used to cultivate there. There had to be secrets he didn't know about. In the arena, Liam and Spectre Cemetery's elder unleashed fancy techniques to put on a show for the audience. None of them were attacking with the intent to kill. They were indirectly allies, so it was hard for them to take the competition seriously. The spectators were awed by their performance, when the insiders found the challenge lackluster. Stephen was starting to get bored. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes, waiting for the drawn-out battle to end. Sir, don't you want to end this match as soon as possible? Liam prompted. If we keep this up, the challenge will last for days. I'm waiting for you to back out, the elder said. We have a mutual acquaintance, and I don't want to ruin our friendship. As if to prove his point, a white phosphorescence commonly seen in tubes condensed on his body. Wisps of ghostly flames hovered in the air, and an aura of death enveloped the arena. Liam was fearless and agile. He elegantly avoided the flames when they swept past. Sir, you should think about the final challenge. Are you confident in fighting Miles? If he uses that explosion technique again, there won't be anywhere for you to hide. Rather than sustaining a serious injury, it'd be in your best interest to let me take the risk for you. Neither of them were willing to yield. The Spectre Cemetery's elder couldn't surrender for no reason. That'd be a huge blow to his reputation and a disgrace to his faction. I can't let you win without a fight. Show me your true abilities. Liam nodded and manifested his wooden totems. His attacks intensified. Each strike targeted the Elder's vitals while leaving himself wide open. The Elder had seen enough of Liam's technique to know that he was defenseless on purpose. Any damage to his body was transferred to his wooden totems. The Elder's ghostly fire spread to the totems, but it was absorbed the moment it came in contact. He changed tactics and struck the totems with his sword. Branches extended from the wooden surfaces and wrapped around his weapon. The Elder noticed that the blade of his sword was burning. The flames weren't hot, and it wasn't destructive. They were as normal as could be. Before he could figure out what they were, the flames were extinguished, leaving behind scorch marks on the blade. Liam noticed his confusion. It's a sealing technique. You can't use your weapon anymore. The Elder slashed in Liam's direction to test his claims. Like he said, his sword didn't release an ounce of energy. His weapon had become an ordinary piece of scrap metal. The Spectre Cemetery's Elder tried to remove the scorch marks from his sword, but they didn't come off. The marks were likely a special rune. Don't waste your energy, Liam said. You can't remove it. Would you like to fight me barehanded? Participants typically brought one weapon with them into the arena. If it was damaged, they didn't have a spare to switch to. The Tribulation sect was the sole exception. They hid their talismans under their robes, and no one knew how many they carried on their person. The Elder engaged in close combat with Liam. They fought with only their fists. Dozens of rounds later, it was clear that the Elder wouldn't be able to take Liam down with his bare hands. He reluctantly surrendered. Neither of them had gone all out, and Liam's condition was more or less at its peak. Cardinal Miles was sitting in the audience. He smirked when his final opponent was announced. His totems transfer damage, but there's a limit to how much it can take. They won't be enough to defend against my talismans. If he doesn't surrender at the beginning of the match, I'll turn him to ashes. The Tribulation sect members cheered him on, but he gave them disdainful looks. You could learn a thing or two from him. The student of the Leviathan unit's leader is much more impressive than all of you combined. A few minutes later, the arena was clean and ready for the final challenge. Both Liam and Miles confidently walked into the ring. Layers of light screens surrounded the VIP seats and blocking the talisman's explosive abilities. I don't think Liam is going to forfeit, Stephen whispered. 10% is too low. There's a high chance that Miles will win the prize. Would you like us to interfere? Salim asked. It's not too late to withhold the prize. No, leave it alone. That would risk the country's reputation. There's a lot of people eyeing the sacred manual. Even if the Tribulation sect wins the competition, it won't be that easy for them to make it back to Scotty. As for Liam, hopefully he has a plan. Liam and Miles sized each other up in the arena. Miles spoke first. I don't want to waste any more time. If you are not going to surrender, then be prepared for the consequences. Let's use our strongest techniques and put an end to this match. Bring it on, Liam provoked. Show me what your talismans can do. You'll regret it, brat. Miles jumped into the air and used his talismans to form a suit of armor. Its defenses could block the incoming explosion. As for Liam, he was a lost cause. Liam summoned his black wooden totems and initiated the first attack, but Miles's talismans were faster. It passed through the entanglement of branches from the totems and stopped right next to Liam. It burst at point-blank range. The explosion spanned 500 yards, and it was countless times stronger than before. The arena's layers of metal turned into molten scraps. Wes and Aston were sitting on the sidelines, watching the competition with disapproving looks. That's definitely cheating, Wes complained. Aston nodded in agreement. He stored energy in the talismans before the competition began. It didn't consume any of his inner energy. The explosion was powerful enough to roast anyone within range, and those who tried to dodge would have been torn to shreds from the shockwave. Everyone anxiously unleashed a wave of their inner energy to assess the situation in the arena before the smoke and flames dispersed. They sensed Liam's aura, but it was weaker than before. A whirlwind took the stage and cleared the smoke and fire. Liam appeared amidst the destruction. His face was pale, and his uniform was burnt. A large scroll swirled around him. Mike was surprised that he had another unusual weapon on him. Liam waved his hand, and the scroll disappeared in a scatter of light. He didn't know how many times it could be used to block the explosion. The Leviathan unit's leader had given it to him as a last line of defense. He wasn't expecting to use the scroll at the beginning of the match. Miles tossed another talisman into the air. Liam had survived, and that got him thinking. Liam was the student of the Leviathan unit's leader, which meant that he was one of the Sovereign's people. If he went overboard and killed him, Stephen might decide to take back the prize. The best-case scenario was for him to surrender of his own accord. Unfortunately, Liam had no plans to forfeit. He leaped into the air and threw his blade at Miles. With his inner energy, it transformed into a phantom of a golden dragon. Liam had taken considerable damage from the explosion, and his manifestation wasn't as strong as it could have been. Right before the phantom was about to tear a hole through Miles's chest, the talismans destroyed it. "Don't you value your own life?" Miles asked. "If I detonate my talismans again, that'll be the end of you." Liam materialized the mysterious scroll again. "I don't think so." He unsheathed his other blade and cut his finger. He used the blood to draw a series of strange symbols on the scroll. All of a sudden, glowing circular lights streaked across the sky, heading straight for Mirage Island. At first, everyone thought they were seeing things, but as the lights came closer, their suspicions were confirmed. It was unmistakable. Those were meteors, and it was definitely Liam who triggered them. Even Miles broke into a cold sweat. Meteors were a beautiful sight from afar, but its destructive potential was huge. The two of them were restricted to what remained of the arena. If either one of them stepped outside the ring, they would lose the match. Stephen wrapped his arms around Kim and carried her to the port. If there was a speedboat at the port, he could send her away from the death zone. Salim ran beside them. "How could the Leviathan unit's leader teach Liam such a crazy technique?" Stephen asked in disbelief. "We spent billions to build that arena to set up the island for the competition. And what are we going to do about the guests and participants?" "Liam is young, and his competitive side clouded his judgment," Salim reasoned calmly. "Either he really wants to win the competition, or this is his last-ditch effort to show his opponent up." At this critical moment, Wes and Aston leaped to the top of the stone pillar and picked up the glass case containing the prize. Alarms were broadcasted from every building. Most of the martial artists were making preparations to escape. As for those lying on the hospital beds, their lives would unfortunately come to an end today. Miles was infuriated. The final challenge was beyond his expectations. Even the prize had been taken away. Was there a point in continuing this match? He glared daggers at Liam. "Are you out of your mind? Are you trying to die with me?" "No, I've already seen the sacred manual," Liam said matter-of-factly. "Victory and defeat mean nothing to me. I just wanted to cause some trouble for you." This trouble was devastating for Miles. He couldn't help but regret his life choices. He should have added more talismans in the first explosion and annihilated Liam from the face of the earth. Then he wouldn't have been forced into this predicament. The meteors were close to 1,000 yards from reaching the ground. The two of them could either escape with their life or stay here and defend their victory with their fate unknown. Miles gritted his teeth and pointed at the sky. His talismans shot towards the meteors and released their stored energy, exploding at the point of collision. Liam was reckless, bold, and daring, but he wasn't stupid. He leaped out of the arena and sped in the direction where Stephen had left Kim and Salim. The sky above Mirage Island was blinding. Miles had chosen to stay and take the meteors head-on. It was too late to regret or make a different decision. Even if he left now, there wasn't enough time for him to make it outside the range of impact. Stephen sighed in exasperation as Liam landed on the speedboat. "You're more destructive than the Tribulation sect. We spent $10 billion to renovate the island for the competition. All that money will go to waste from your technique." Liam averted his gaze in embarrassment and touched the back of his neck sheepishly. "I apologize, Mr. Adams. I got carried away. It was my first life-and-death battle." "Well, what's done is done. Our people should have had enough time to leave the island. The rest are our enemies. I guess your meteors will take them out in one blow." Liam had used his blood to draw coordinates on the scroll to activate a destructive attack from outer space. His technique covered a wide area and packed a large amount of force. It was capable of destroying small cities and ravaging countries. There was a silver lining, but Stephen deeply disapproved of Liam's reckless decision. The whole world knew that the U.S. was the host of the martial arts competition. Today's disaster would be remembered for all of history. The peaceful days were as good as over. The participants had signed a life-and-death contract, but the same couldn't be said about their superiors, their backers, or the spectators who were plotting against the U.S. To the rest of the world, they were guests, and they were about to die an accidental death on the United States' territory. Just as Stephen was imagining the chaos about to befall the country, another unexpected situation occurred. A dense crowd surged into the air to face the meteors. These were the martial artists who hadn't reacted fast enough to the warnings. They were going all out to save their lives. The destruction Stephen feared didn't come to pass. The blinding light dimmed as the meteors were shattered into tiny pieces. Under their enemies' joint efforts, the apocalyptic disaster was avoided by a hair. "What should we do now?" Salima asked. "Miles is the final winner." "Let him have the prize," Stephen said. "It's his victory since Liam withdrew. I'll leave the rest to you. I'll be heading back to Annapolis with Kim and Liam." Stephen was somewhat dejected at the thought of handing the treasure to the Tribulation sect, but their enemies on the island couldn't be happier. They were rejoicing from surviving their narrow brush with death. They praised Miles and supported him as the winner. Salim held out the glass case with an indifferent expression. "Congratulations to the Tribulation sect for winning the competition. This is somewhat unexpected. Here's your prize. Please keep it safe." Under everyone's watchful gazes, Miles opened the case and reached for the metal plate inside. He flipped it over and his mind went blank. A stabbing pain filled his senses. This fragment was genuine. The backlash he felt was real. Miles couldn't stop himself from grinning. "Thank you for your generous gift. I hope our collaboration can continue in the future." The Tribulation sect and everyone else boarded their respective ships and left the island without wasting a second. Many of them were hoping to follow the Tribulation sect and wait for an opportunity to ambush them. Miles had displayed his absolute strength during the competition, but that didn't scare their competitors off. The Tribulation sect had limited talismans. Once they wasted their supply, it was game over. With their departure, the aftermath of the competition on the island was left for the Leviathan unit to handle. The Leviathan unit's leader had watched the challenges during the live broadcast, and he was furious. He went to Stephen's office to apologize for the trouble Liam had caused. "It's my fault for not keeping a closer eye on my student. He almost caused a huge disaster. I've given him a stern talking to and placed him under house arrest in the mountains to reflect on his actions. If you think these punishments are too light, I'll think of something else." When the Leviathan unit's leader taught Liam that technique, he told him not to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. The entire world had witnessed Liam's ultimate technique from the live broadcast. There was no doubt that enemy forces would soon come up with a countermeasure. Stephen could tell that the Leviathan unit's leader cared about his student from how flustered he was after he found out about the crisis that Liam had almost caused. "Objectively speaking, aside from Liam's questionable decision at the end, he did well in the competition. Reaching the final round is an achievement. There's no need to punish him." Stephen pulled up an electronic map on his computer. A red dot was on the screen. It was Tristan and Zane's locations. They were tracking down the participants affiliated with the Northern European and African teams. "Ask Liam to help Tristan and Zane. If they find anything, inform the Leviathan unit as soon as possible." "Thank you, Mr. Adams," the Leviathan unit's leader said sincerely. "I'll let him know." In the days after the competition, it was unusually quiet in the U.S. No hostile countries or forces came knocking on their door. Everyone's attention was on Cardinal Miles. According to the fortress at the northeastern border, the Tribulation sect had finally left the country. Several groups of unknown identities followed them across the border. There was another group of Tribulation sect members hiding in Annapolis under the lead of the Oracle, Bastion. If the team on the Mirage Island failed, They would ambush the victor and steal the sacred manual. Miles had won, so there was nothing for them to do. Bastian wasn't in a hurry to leave the city. He became a guest of honor in DeAndre and Ron's house. He disguised himself to pay them a visit. Because of their two useless family members, the conflict between DeAndre and Ron with the Sovereign had escalated. This was a chance for the Tribulation sect to take advantage of their complicated family issues to deal a blow to the Sovereign. Bastian crossed his legs and sat proudly on the couch. I've heard you've been searching for ways to break Harry and Rebecca out of prison. It's not that simple. The prisoners have broken out of the Seven Stars prison once, but it's one of the most important places in the country. Their security is tight. After Bastian introduced himself, DeAndre considered him a savior. You hold a high position in the Tribulation sect. I hope you can lend us a hand. If you have conditions, let us know. We'll fulfill them to the best of our ability. Have you ever considered the consequences of betraying the Sovereign? Your entire family will fall to ruin. What's the point in keeping two foolish successors? Bastian was testing DeAndre's determination. Ron was quietly listening to the conversation. Unlike DeAndre, he had maintained his rationality. If they went through with it, they would become wanted criminals. As their grandfather, this is something I have to do, DeAndre said. Okay, gather information on the prison and I'll discuss this with my superior. Bastian strolled out of the house. Right before he closed the door behind him, he heard sounds of quarreling from the living room. DeAndre and Ron were arguing again, but that had nothing to do with him. He called Augustus to report the situation. Do we still need to cause conflict in Annapolis? The Sovereign's family is weak. They're basically useless. Augustus was in a bad mood. He'd heard about the subsequent fights at the northeastern border. There were so many groups out to kill Miles. Who else but the Sovereign could have arranged something like this? Let's do it. When Annapolis is overrun with internal strife, we'll lead our people to the northeastern border. The Tribulation sect had been living in the snowy plains of Scotty for a long time. It was a familiar environment, but it was also harsh, and resources were scarce. If it weren't for their high cultivation, they would have long been frozen into ice sculptures. Augustus hoped to find a more suitable place for his faction to live, and it had been a while since he'd set his sights on the northeastern border. The Seven Stars prison was the most heavily guarded infrastructure in the U.S. Aside from the Sovereign, the only other person who could freely enter and exit the building was Dr. Dalton. His experiments frequently required martial artists, so he asked the prisoners for assistance in exchange for a certain amount of time off their sentences. To facilitate his research, he'd arranged for a new research institute to be built at the bottom of a mountain near the prison. When Stephen came back to Annapolis, Dr. Dalton had dragged him to the institute for a tour. The outer wall of the 4-story research institute was coated in camouflage paint. From afar, the building appeared to be an extension of the vegetation. Dr. Dalton led Stephen to his lab where his team was carrying a sealed glass container into the room. I plan to use the liquefied energy collected from the competition to create an expert martial artist. Stephen had almost forgotten about the liquefied energy because of the chaos towards the end of the competition. He examined the young man dressed in a prisoner's uniform in the container. What crime did he commit? None. He's not a criminal. He's an empty shell of an artificial body created by biochemical technology. We used the previous product as a sample and upgraded it. Stephen looked at Dr. Dalton in disbelief. Were you storing this body at the Seven Stars prison after disguising it as a prisoner? Dr. Dalton cleared his throat awkwardly. Don't mind the details. The point is, this artificial body could become one of your strongest subordinates. Stephen inspected the young man's facial features. From a certain angle, there was a slight resemblance to Zane's body. Dr. Dalton pressed a button to begin the soaking process. A nutrient solution mixed with a certain proportion of liquefied energy was injected into the glass container. The solution would prompt the secondary development of each organ and transmit the memory of a martial artist. In other words, the artificial body would obtain the physique and knowledge of an expert martial artist within 24 hours. Stephen decided to spend the night at the institute. The glass container was connected to a computer through electronic circuits, and the real-time data of the experiment was displayed. Stephen was an outsider, and he didn't know much about this field. It didn't take long for the numbers on the screen to blur together. An entire night had passed, and it was already the next morning. 24 hours was a long time, and he was bored. The 7 Stars prison is nearby, Dr. Dalton suggested. If you have nothing to do, you can spar with the prisoners. As martial artists, I'm sure they'll appreciate the workout. Stephen didn't want to cause trouble for the staff at the prison to relieve his boredom. He settled for taking a stroll around the institute to take in the beauty of nature. Coincidentally, Bastian was in the vicinity with his team to investigate the prison. He'd given this task to DeAndre and Ron, but they were unreliable. He couldn't count on them. One of the Tribulation sect members pointed in the direction where Stephen was sitting. Isn't that the Sovereign? This is our chance to deal with him. Bastian followed his line of sight. Stephen was sitting outside the research institute, seemingly in a meditative state. The prison isn't too far away. It's heavily guarded. If we attempt to assassinate the Sovereign, the guards will be here in less than 5 minutes. Bastian was hiding in the forest on the mountain with his team. The tunnel leading to the 7 Stars prison was up ahead. He tapped his talisman with one finger, and it folded itself into a small metallic beetle the size of a grape. It scuttled through the grass towards the edge of the forest. His team was fascinated. Students like you need to cultivate diligently, Bastian said. The talisman has many uses. It's not just a weapon. As an oracle, he held an upper management position in the Church of Catastrophe. His fellow faction members of the same rank each had their own unique skill with the talismans. Transforming a talisman into a beetle was a low-level technique. While Stephen was in a meditative state, his spiritual energy and the natural environment entered his range of perception. He sensed an unusual presence, but he didn't move or make a sound. Bastian had a higher status than the Cardinals. His martial arts were on another level, and his aura was completely different. As a result, Stephen couldn't immediately identify him. The metallic beetle didn't attract the guard's attention. It slipped into the tunnel and scuttled into the depths. Bastian had covered the beetle with a layer of his inner energy, allowing him to sense its surroundings. At the end of the tunnel, there was a heavy metal gate. This was as far as the beetle could go. He would have to wait for the gate to be opened. The guards suddenly started moving. They walked up the mountain path, heading for the forest. We're leaving, Bastian instructed. I'll leave the beetle inside the tunnel. Once the gate opens, I'll be able to go inside and collect the information we need. Before that, we have to cover up our tracks. His team left as quietly as they came. A few minutes later, Stephen couldn't sense their presence anymore. The afternoon passed in the blink of an eye, and soon it was evening. Stephen joined the staff at the Research Institute for dinner before going back to the lab with the team. Dr. Dalton reviewed the numbers on the screen with a satisfied smile. The process is complete. We can release him from the container. He's absorbed the knowledge and purest essence of a martial artist's strength. He's an all-rounder in combat. Stephen examined the young man inside the glass container. His present wasn't that different from Zane's. If he really was as powerful as Dr. Dalton claimed, he would be restricted by the limits of his body. Of course, he's not as strong as you, Mr. Adams. I'll arrange a combat test against a few prisoners. Dr. Dalton's request was sent to the captain of the prison's patrol team. The gate was opened, and 3 muscular prisoners with fierce expressions were escorted to the open space outside the Research Institute. The metallic beetle took advantage of the opportunity and sneaked past the gate with no one noticing. Just as Bastian found a cave for his team to hide in, he sensed the surroundings of the beetle open up. It wasn't a tunnel anymore. It was inside the prison. The internal structure of the prison has changed quite a bit. It must have been modified after the previous breach. It won't be easy to rescue those 2 little brats from the Cassidy family. Are we really going to help them? His teammate asked. They have nothing to offer us. Harry and Rebecca aren't important. Our goal is to recruit other criminals. The enemy of our enemy is our friend. The door to the sealed glass container was opened, and a young and handsome man with fair skin, clothed in a prisoner's uniform, stepped out. His eyes brimmed with curiosity and wonder as he looked around the lab. Mr. Adams, please give him a name, Dr. Dalton urged. All eyes in the room turned to Stephen, including the young man, who was looking at him expectantly. He suddenly felt very pressured. The young man was attractive, and if he were a real human, he would have been recruited into the entertainment industry. Stephen pulled out his phone and searched up a list of trending celebrities. He picked the first name he saw. I'll call him Ezra. Dr. Dalton, his team, and more importantly, the young man, seemed to approve of his on-the-spot decision. Dr. Dalton had originally planned to conduct the experiment on a prisoner and use the AI chip to minimize the side effects. He was running low on chips, so he chose the biochemical body instead. The liquefied energy was an accumulation of inner energy, the essence of a martial artist. When it was transferred into the biochemical body, it gave rise to the consciousness and existence known as Ezra. "What would you like for me to do, Mr. Adams?" Ezra asked. "Can you spar with the 3 people outside? Do the best you can. There's no pressure." Ezra nodded. "Understood." The guards unlocked the 3 prisoners' handcuffs and formed a circle around them to prevent them from attempting an escape. To motivate the 3 prisoners, Stephen gave them an enticing offer. "If you give it your best during the spar and win, you'll be given an extra serving of meat during meals, and your sentence will be reduced by 6 months. The prisoners were rendered speechless. At first, they thought he was joking, but then they realized his identity. Stephen was the sovereign, and he was a man of his word. "What if we kill him accidentally?" one of the prisoners asked. "You should be aware of our strength. It is not easy to keep it under control." "If you kill him, then in addition to the previous conditions, you'll have the opportunity to choose your tasks at the prison while you're serving your sentence." "It's a deal." The conditions were too generous to pass up, and the 3 prisoners turned to Ezra with every intention of getting rid of him. Their auras surged like raging flames, and a gust of wind rustled the trees around the clearing. The ground shook, and cracks appeared beneath their feet. Ezra calmly walked to the center of the clearing. A storm of punches and kicks descended upon him. Every one of the prisoners' attacks landed, but not only was he not knocked back, he barely felt a thing. "Your defenses are surprisingly high," one of the prisoners commented. "We'll have to go all out." "Go ahead," Ezra said. "I need to show Mr. Adams what I'm capable of." "You arrogant brat, we'll teach you a lesson." The 3 prisoners fused their inner energy and manifested a phantom of a large warrior with 3 heads and 6 arms holding a unique weapon in each. Sabers, spears, swords, axes, and chains were launched in Ezra's direction. This was an attack he couldn't brute force his way through. His figure blurred, and he swerved between each weapon at lightning speed. The weapons crashed into the ground. A tremor shook the area as a cloud of dust filled the sky. The 3 prisoners didn't stop. They unleashed sharp gusts of wind at Ezra. He was fast, but he would have to slow down if he was hit. Ezra picked up a tree branch and threw it in the air. The branch itself was fragile, but when it was infused with his inner energy, it was capable of deflecting weapons that weighed tons. Every time the Phantom Warrior struck with his weapon, the branches deviated the trajectory of the slight margin. Stephen was impressed by Ezra's strength. "He's using regular techniques to face off against a manifestation from 3 people. That means his body's reached the point where his physical strength is enough to win most battles without needing to use fancy techniques." Dr. Dalton's eyes shone with pride as he watched his creation fight. "An artificial body cultivated with the purest form of inner energy obtains the essence of a martial artist's strength. If you hold another martial arts competition from time to time, we'll have enough liquefied energy to mass-produce artificial martial artists." Stephen sighed, recalling the near destruction of Mirage Island from Liam's meteors. "That won't be possible. Not for now, anyway. The recent competition almost destroyed the entire island. Not only is it costly, it poses a risk to our people's lives. We also don't have another valuable prize to attract martial artists to participate." As the battle progressed, Ezra figured out the prisoners' pattern of attacks, and he began to go on the offensive. He used his dexterity to his advantage and leaped onto the Phantom Warrior's shoulder in 3 steps. The warrior was massive, and it was hard to aim accurately at a tiny pest on his shoulder. Ezra condensed a vortex on his palm and struck the side of one of the Phantom's heads. Its inner energy flowed into his body. The 3 prisoners realized what he was doing and leaped toward him. Ezra waved the tree branches in his free hand. They extended and wrapped around the prisoners, tossing them into the distant clearing. Stephen recognized the familiar technique. "That vortex is similar to the talismans." The techniques of the tribulation sect were emitted into Ezra's knowledge. Unlike regular martial artists, an artificial body has no training or memories. It's like a blank piece of paper. Anything can be written to achieve the best effect. As Ezra drained the energy from the Phantom Warrior, its form became transparent. In under a minute, it vanished completely. When the 3 prisoners rushed at Ezra again, he met their fists head-on with his own fist. The energy he drained from the Phantom exploded and sent the prisoners flying. Stephen was satisfied with Ezra's capabilities. He decided to have him stay by his side and carry out missions. Everyone returned to the research institute, while the 3 dejected prisoners were escorted back to their cells. Dr. Dalton poured Stephen a glass of wine when they were settled at the dining table. Ezra is strong, but his most notable feature is his high defense. If a fatal force comes in contact with his body, his skin will morph into a flexible material similar to rubber. It's difficult for his skin to be torn or penetrated. He could save your life in a crisis. Stephen gently pinched Ezra's arm. Sure enough, the texture of his skin was different from humans. It was similar to liquid metal. The guardians of the palace had been sticking to Stephen like glue ever since he almost died in the desert back when he was kicked out of the country. With Ezra by his side, maybe he could convince them that he didn't need to be around them all the time to ensure his safety. The captain of the patrol team at the 7 Stars prison urgently entered the room to report an incident. We found unfamiliar footprints in the forest 2 miles away from the tunnel. My team is investigating, but there's no news so far. Could they be villagers or tourists? Stephen asked. No, the military designated a 20-mile radius around the prison as a no-entry zone. Unauthorized persons who set foot in the restricted area will be killed on sight. This is a warning to the public, and no one would dare test the law. Stephen remembered sensing an unfamiliar presence when he was meditating outside the institute. Trying to find traces of trespassers in the forest is like searching for a needle in a haystack. Keep your guard up. If we can't find them, we'll wait for them to come to us. During Ezra's construction phase, Dr. Dalton had thought of different ways an artificial human could assist the Sovereign. One of them involved the prison. That was one of the reasons he'd stored the body at the 7 Stars prison. He wanted to test if an artificial human could blend in with the other prisoners. Dr. Dalton waved his hand, and his team tactfully took their leave. Mr. Adams, you don't have to worry about the 7 Stars prison. It's one of the most secure places in the country. I know, but I can't ignore the fact that it was breached once before. I'm worried that history will repeat itself. I have an idea, Dr. Dalton whispered. He explained to Stephen his plan of having Ezra pretend to be a convict and escape with a group of prisoners who had the AI chip implanted. They would then make contact with the enemy and pretend to seek refuge. It was a brilliant plan. Your talent for strategy is on par with Salim's, Stephen praised. Dr. Dalton didn't think too much about the compliment. He had a passion for research, not strategizing. The prison's patrol team pretended like Ezra was a prisoner. They escorted him through the tunnel and into the 7 Stars prison. The 3 prisoners who were defeated earlier during the spar had recounted the incident to the rest of the prisoners. Everyone watched Ezra being escorted down the corridor with curiosity and interest. The patrol teams also set up explosives around the mountain. A helicopter transported a group of security guards from Mirage Island to the Research Institute. They used to be prisoners, but they were allowed to come outside after they agreed to have the AI chip implanted and work as a guard on the island. Stephen gave them a new mission. You've done a great job on the island, so I'll consider part of your crimes atoned for. Your next mission is to follow Ezra and search for our enemies. The guards nodded. After leaving the prison and becoming a security guard, they were used to a leisurely life outside, and they didn't want to return to the prison if they could help it. The arrangements were finalized when cameras were set up on the roof of the Research Institute. They couldn't invite reporters, so this would have to do. Dr. Dalton pressed the detonation button, and an explosion erupted from a distant mountain peak. Not long after, Ezra and the undercover prisoners rushed out of the tunnel. They ran towards the forest in the mountains to find the enemy. Bastian and his team were woken up by the explosion. Why is it so noisy outside? The tunnel is burning. Something must have happened inside the prison. Bastian ran out of the cave and leaped to the top of the tree to assess the situation. The tunnel was covered in flames, and the patrolling soldiers were in a frenzy. Are there other people attempting to breach the prison? Maybe we weren't the only ones DeAndre and Ron asked for help. That's unlikely, his teammate said. They don't have the finances to hire people to work for them. Stephen had arranged a variety of movie props. Most of the destruction was an illusion created by the smoke. As Ezra and his group pretended to flee into the forest in a panic, the patrol team slowed their pace to maintain a certain distance. Bastion was thrilled when he caught sight of the escaping prisoners. This development was in their favor, and they didn't even need to make a single move. Let's follow and wait for a chance to interact with them. They're enemies of the U.S. It won't be hard to win them over. What about Harry and Rebecca? His teammate asked. They're still inside the prison. Trash should remain in the garbage dump. Don't worry about them.